Welcome to today's American Legion. I'm Doug Micklon, State Vice Commander. And today's show is we're going to be talking about the New Hampshire State Veterans Cemetery up in Boscawen, New Hampshire. And with us we have Lloyd Farnham, the superintendent, and state representative and past department commander for the American Legion, Jim Fenton. Jim, let's start with you a little bit about the history of the cemetery. You know, why its location. You know, when was it started, and why did it take so long for New Hampshire to get a veteran cemetery?
Well, as you know, Doug, the American Legion's had a cemetery committee for a great number of years, and for years people have been looking for a place to put the cemetery. They're looking for a national cemetery. New Hampshire does not qualify for it. We don't have enough people in our area to do that. So when I was department commander, I drafted a letter and I had the VFW and DAV counterparts sign it. And we went over to Portsmouth and asked a piece of peas be set aside for us. And we had 100 acres there, but we had 5 buildings we'd have to tear down and get rid of 2 or 3 ammunition bunkers. So that's the best we could get out of them, and we looked around at many, many places. Our next bet, we went to Bearbrook State Park, and we thought we were in pretty good shape there, but then the federal government said, time out, pal. Back in 1936, we gave you some money for a project there, so we have first dibs on it. So we said, well, this is not going too good at all. Just don't tell anybody what we're doing and see how it works out. And then, early on, I should say, we had a look at a piece of land out in Boscawen. And the chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee at that time, Colonel Fenton, said, it's full of Indian relics and we can't touch it. So we said, all right. And we went out and took a look at it anyway. So it belonged to part of the New Hampshire State Forest, nursery, I should say, New Hampshire State Nursery. And we got talking with the people that were in charge of that property, and it ended up that land was going to be available. Meantime, I contacted Washington, and I found out that we have about $1.5 million available. But I had to submit a grant within the next 8 days. So I drafted a grant and sent it down to Washington, and it was approved. So now I had a grant approved, I had a good shot at the land. We still didn't say anything about the land. Then we had to have historical resources, Department of Historical Resources, to go over the land. And they drilled, I think it's 104 or somewhere around there, test holes, looking for artifacts. And they found a few, but nothing that would have disturbed the whole. It was 104 acres. The state of New Hampshire evaluated the acreage at $140,000. So knowing what the state of New Hampshire assessments are doing, we had an individual assessor that was assessing the town of Boscawen at the time. And he came in with $725,000. So we developed a construction grant with the federal government. It's 50% cash, 50% soft. That's in-kind things. So we said, well, that's fine. We got, I'll go to the finance committee, and I went to the finance committee, and they didn't like to spend too much money. So we did get some money out of them. And we put the package together, and now we had title transferred from Department of Resource and Economic Development to the Children's Veterans Home. And Barry Conway had title to it then. Now we could go ahead and we put in historical resources in, tested all through the area, and they gave the stamp of approval. Then we had 3 architects, one from New York, one from, and the Department of Transportation's architect, and Grenier Haley Incorporated or Limited from Concord. And they developed a master plan for the cemetery. And then we went battling back and forth, and I'm a fellow that likes to measure twice and cut once. And we did that up until 2 years ago, and then the cemetery was turned over to a different committee, or same committee with different people. And we got it off the ground in September of that year. And that kind of puts it in your ballot right now.
Well, the cemetery came under the direction of the New Hampshire Adjutant General back in July of 1997. But, you know, what Jim is talking about here, it was all this planning was 10 years or more in coming. An awful lot of veteran groups and individuals and people in the legislature that made it really possible. And so I look at it as the person who came on, the Johnny-come-lately, so to speak. And but I really value, and I think all the efforts that were made, and I think the people that were part of this should be, you know, really praised, because what they've done they've given probably the best entitlement to the veterans that they could give, and to assure that each New Hampshire veteran that wants to be buried in the state can be buried in a veteran cemetery, and that means a great deal. When we started in July of 1997, we were clearing the land. We have actually 104 acres at the Bosquen site to work with. Probably about 74 of those acres would be good for burial plots. But we went into what we call phase one, and phase one included a columbarium, which is where above ground ashes or cremains are put. We also built a chapel for committal services to be held when either the veteran or the veteran's eligible family member passed away. The committal services was held in the chapel. Then there was also a circle of flags that was built on phase one, and the circle of flags has certainly the national colors, the POW, MIA, and the state flag. So the columbarium was finished in December of 1997, and we started committing ashes at that time. The actual chapel and the in-ground burials occurred in April of the next year. And at this time we have, as of today actually, we're about 315 veterans are eligible for, you know, members of the family that are there.
The columbarium, I heard that that's getting filled up quite fast. Are there plans for expansion on that? Or?
Well, cremation seems to be very popular as a whole over the full burial, and certainly between in-ground cremains or above ground, certainly the columbarium with the above ground is the most popular method of burial right now. I think we have to look down the line very quickly, certainly in the around 2002, 2003, at the level and the history that we're developing right now, to be ready if we're going to continue to have more space in the columbarium.
The columbarium, I know that the veteran and his wife and
Dependent child.
one dependent child.
Or as many as he has.
Or as many as he has.
Dependent, yeah.
Okay.
And it's a dependent child under the age of 21. There can be some adult children with disabilities that have not been married that can, at any age, be buried with his or her parents.
Now, does that also include the columbarium also if they decide to go that way? Or?
Yes, it doesn't matter what type. It doesn't matter what type of burial. It's the same. There's a lot that's the same, and it's different at the veteran cemetery, but different at maybe some of the public cemeteries. to the veteran, there's no cost. We certainly get reimbursed by the VA, but there's no cost as far as the veteran is concerned. And with the eligible family member, be it the spouse or the child, it's $350. But whether it's a full casketed burial or whether it's cremains in the columbarium, the fee is the same.
Can you also have your ashes put into the ground itself, or do they have to go in the columbarium?
No, we have the three methods. One, the ashes into the columbarium, ashes into the ground. Actually, we can bury 8 urns in a regular gravesite. And then, of course, we have the full casket. And we have what we call a double depth burial, too, is where the spouse and the veteran are buried in the same site, one on top of the other, versus the side-by-side that many of the cemeteries have done. There was a time here in the past 3 or 4 months where we did side-by-side because of some of the conditions up there, but we've overcome some of those obstacles.
Yeah. Now, I know that in the beginning there wasn't graveside services weren't allowed, but I believe now they are. Is that correct?
Initially, when the whole concept,
Yeah.
and you step in here anytime, Representative, because the chapel was built for the main purpose of having the committal service there. And there was certainly a lot of input to many of us at the Adjutant General's office that there was a need for maybe more of a closure and having the gravesite service similar to what we have in most of the private cemeteries in the state. So we started to initiate it, and we do offer the option now, and that you can either have a chapel committal service or a graveside service. Whatever they choose is what they will have on that particular day. Bosquen is a wonderful place to have a cemetery. It can also be the hottest place. It could be the coldest place on earth too. So that we do say how nice the chapel is, and because if we have snow and wind and rain and that, people are very glad that they have the chapel.
I think there's, in the program designed by the federal government, you must allow 600 grave sites per acre. That includes the infrastructure of that acre, the streets and whatever. And what's it, 9 acres have been developed?
9 acres have been developed.
So
at this
theoretically,
time.
you've got 5,400 grave sites there. But that changes, as Lloyd said, you can put 8 cremations in one grave site. So it's a lot of flux in there.
We're learning, and are in the learning stages, and at the time, those 3 or 4 months this year where we had to go side by side, we know that if we continue like that, we're going to fill the cemetery up that much quicker. And most of the veteran cemeteries in our area, probably the closest that does it the way we do is in Connecticut. But like in the state of Maine, for example, they are now building their 3rd veteran cemetery because they have filled up so quickly. But that's a side by side. So hopefully we'll increase the what we will get out of the land and the site.
How many services do you perform a month?
I think the anticipation was that once the cemetery became known, and that's one of the things that we're having problems with. A lot of people aren't aware that the veteran cemetery is out there, and that's why a program like this is so beneficial. We expected about 6 a day, and we're open Monday through Friday, not open on weekends or holidays, and so that that was what the projection would be. To answer your question, right now we're only averaging about 25 a month, but that will steadily increase. I think the wonderful things that the cemetery is doing that a lot don't do is we're having pre-registration so that people can send in a form. There's a form here they can send in. They attach the DD-214. The veteran attaches the DD-214. If he wants his spouse to be, if the person wants the spouse to be buried with him or her, the marriage certificate is attached. Some evidence of residency within the state. And they do all this work and get certificates of eligibility early on. And we recommend that every veteran that wants to be buried in the veteran cemetery do a pre-application. Do all that work, give it to the, and get the certificate, give it to the proper people, be it the executor of your estate or the funeral director or whatever. So when that situation comes, that this is one less thing that has to be done. Plus, there's the prior knowledge that, yes, I have a place where I can be buried. So so we recommend any veteran, whatever age.
So this is open to New Hampshire residents only?
New Hampshire residents at some time during their lives. I mean, they could have been born in the state of New Hampshire, enlisted in New Hampshire, but there definitely has to be evidence of residency.
Okay, well, that's what I was getting at, because we have so many snowbirds within the state that if, you know, a couple went down south and, you know, finally decided to stay down there year-round, you know, they had an opportunity to come back and, you know, to be, you know, buried in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. I think that was a very important thing that.
Yeah. When we built the program, the plan for this that has been redeveloped over the time, we wanted to make sure that all of the New Hampshire veterans were taken care of at this site. This site can hold close to 60,000 anyway. And what we did is we set some guidelines up in that issue. The snowbird comes back home. The fellow grows here for his first 17 years, goes into the service and relocates. And he's at the age now that he's looking around. He can come back home. All he has to do is prove that he has residency here, and his birth certificate would prove that.
What about the veteran that his spouse passes on before him and he remarries?
I think if I remember, Lloyd can correct me, the first spouse is the veteran's spouse. But I don't know what has changed since that time, because it suggests that the first spouse remarries, and what happens?
When the first spouse remarries, then that person would not be eligible. If we have one gentleman that was a veteran who has lost all three of his wives, and all of those wives will be eligible to be buried there.
Well, that's good to know. I think that'll relieve a lot of people's minds that, you know,
Yeah.
things change as you get older, you get lonesome, and, you know, companionship is very, very important when you lose a loved one, you know.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Another thing, go back just a bit on the internment. In the federal cemeteries, national cemeteries, you go to the committal area, and then you walk away, and you get a notice a week or so later giving you the plot location and description how to get there. That was what we originally set up in this cemetery. But the federal government did it because of possible liabilities, and it can happen anywhere. At this cemetery, I think Lloyd has made some good progress in some sort of isn't there some sort of a sleeve that goes in the ground or something that, so if I wanted to have graveside, I could have it?
Yes, you could.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stops the ground from collapsing around and,
Yes.
Most of liability, yeah.
okay. Lloyd, could you tell us a little bit about what's happened up there recently? You know, what improvements have taken place and...
Well, we're quite excited, to be very honest with you. I was at a meeting today. We were talking about some of the areas that are going to improve at the cemetery in the next month. Uh, the Veterans Council has had a fundraiser that's been going on, and a number of the veterans groups in the state for a Caroline system, which costs right around $18,000.
Explain what a Caroline system
Yes, thank you. Caroline system is going to allow that we be able to have taps with dignity for the veterans when they have their committal service. It also will have music that will might be military hymns, it might be chimes, tolls, or whatever that can go out into the cemetery. And so that right now, when we have a committal service at the chapel, that's the only place that where taps can be played. If we have a graveside service, even a half a mile away from the chapel, and the family would like to have taps and there isn't a bugler available, we'll be able to do that. So it's going to add a lot of real enthusiasm, I think, for people that come up there. It's a nice thing to have within the cemetery. Most of your veteran cemeteries have them, and it's been just a wonderful fundraising event that's been going on. We still are, many places still in phase one, and we still have the temporary sign up as one goes up to on Route 3. And that will be coming down shortly, and there's going to be a widening of the entrance into the cemetery, and in the medium strip there's going to be a granite sign that's going to indicate the New Hampshire State Veterans Cemetery, and that's going to be a beautiful asset to the cemetery. Representative talked about, when we first started it. Started the cemetery, it was like a 50% match against federal funds, and fortunately we are on tap right now to receive 100% of funds from the VA for a maintenance building. And we started with the chapel, and probably should have started with the maintenance building, but this way we assured that we had the chapel. But for the last 2 years, we've been out there with equipment and facing the elements without the proper lodging for all the equipment and for the men and everything. That's going to be hopefully funded soon, and it was our anticipation that at least the outer structure might be put up during the winter of this year. So that's going to be a real big asset to the cemetery and to the people that work there, and also will beautify the. I don't really know that a maintenance building beautifies the cemetery, but if one was up there now and saw what we had, we're going to be going in the right direction.
And you might have an office instead of the closet that you're in now?
Well, that's correct. Actually, in the chapel, that office is for the clergy and anyone to change. We have a lot of military honors there, and they usually use those areas at the chapel for changing. They come down all the way from as far as Fort Drum when it comes to Army honors and that. And so they use other parts of the chapel, so it makes it nice.
People should go up and visit that.
Well, somebody wanted to go up and visit. Where is it located? It's just north of Concord.
Exit 17.
Off of Route 93.
I think that's another reason they chose it. It was in the central
Yes,
central part of the state, very easy to get to.
How far from the highway?
It's about 5.5 miles from the highway. One goes through Bosquen itself, and they come to the fork in the road where there's a congregational church
to the
there.
right.
Four goes to Andover, and 3 goes to Franklin, and so it's about 1.5 miles up on the right-hand side from that church, and it's well marked on the highway, well marked on the secondary roads too.
Now, if anybody wanted to get information on your pre-registration, they can call 603-271-2764.
It's
Or-
603-271-6763.
Say that again. For the people at home.
Okay, I'm going to go slow. We all know it's 603, but it's 271-6763.
And should the attention?
Just to the attention of the New Hampshire State Veterans Cemetery. I think what people need to know, though, different from other cemeteries, is that the administrative office is in Concord at the National Guard Armory, whereas it's not on site at the Veterans Cemetery. So we'd ask people to call us, and we will send the necessary information out. There's no need to come to the reservation unless they would like to talk about it. And also very strongly encourage them to go up to the cemetery and view what is there, because it is a beautiful site.
So if they wanted to make future plans, they can come up anytime and, you know, you or your staff will sit down and take them out and talk with them?
That's correct. Initially, when we have requests, we will send the application out and we'll send a brochure that hopefully will answer a number of the questions. But if those questions aren't answered, we have many calls come in on a daily basis of clarification. And it's true, nearly every circumstance is different. And so we have to, you know.
One of the important things that Lloyd picked out was once you get your application in and you meet all of those criteria, you'll have a certificate. And you can do that today or tomorrow, but if you get that done and it's put away with all of your other insurance papers and so forth, the spouse has no hassle at all. You know, just hands it over to the funeral director and it's all set.
Right. And that's why we strongly encourage this is the time to do it. So many times we've had situations where families have come into our office hours after the death of a loved one, and we've had accidental deaths, which are even harder to deal with. Another thing, the service that we do is to assure that if a veteran dies in New Hampshire, let's say close to the weekend, that funeral directors are able to get a hold of somebody at the cemetery to schedule a service for early the following week. And so that we are actually on 24-hour call to assist a family in an emergency situation during the weekends.
Okay. Well, I'm getting a signal that time is running out. It's been a very, very informative show, and Lloyd, I really want to thank you for coming down. I know that your schedule is busy, and Jimmy,
Yeah.
you're always on the go. You know, we never track you down. But Jim, thank you very much for all the work that you've done to get this very, very important program going in the state of New Hampshire.
We'll
really
still be
appreciate
working in
it.
the legislature for whatever help we can
Well,
give
you got
them.
what, 20 more years up there before you retire?
No. I'm going to hit my three-quarter century mark, and then I think I'll go back and raise peas or carrots or
Start all
something.
over again. Well, Jim, thank you very much. For today's American Legion, I'm Doug Micklon.